Shalom guys, welcome back to another episode here at Jashavi Ministry with Casa de Israel Yarah. I thank you again for being there. If you like the content, like I always tell you, that we're putting up on our channel, like, subscribe. If you have questions, concerns, put them in the comment section down below. Appreciate it. With that being said, let's start with this week's Torah portion. But before we start reading, let's do a Torah blessing. Baruch Adonai Hamevorah, Adonai Hamevorah Leolam Ba'ed, Baruch Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher ba'arbaru mikol ha'amim, v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch Adonai noten haTorah. Bless Adonai who is blessed. Bless Adonai who is blessed now and forever. Blessed are you, Adonai, sovereign of the universe, who has chosen us from among the nations and has given us the Torah. Blessed are you, Adonai, who gives the Torah. Amen. So, this week's Torah portion is Balak. Let's get started. Torah portion Balak starts Numbers 22. But before we get started, we're going to go to the PowerPoint and we're going to follow certain things that we will see in this week's reading. And we will pay attention to a certain information that we have to pay attention to before we read the context of what's going on in this week's Torah portion. Okay, so let's go to the information. So like I said, this week's Torah portion is in Numbers 22 verse 1 through chapter 25 verse 9. And the prophet's portion or the Haftarah is Micha chapter 5 verse 7 through chapter 6 verse 8 and Romans 11 verse 25 to 32. In this Torah portion, Balak, we have to go back to last week's Torah portion, and where there's a recount of how Sihon, the king of the Amorites, and Og, the king of Bashan, tried to prevent the Israelites or the Jewish people from passing through their borders to get to the promised land. Both kings decided to wage war against the Israelites and both were decisively defeated. So Elohim and the people of Israel were trying to get to the land, and these two kings did not give access to the people through the king's road, and so they were defeated by the Israelites. We see in Numbers 22 verse 2 that we find Israel encamped along the borders of Moab. This is east of the Jordan River and finally ready to enter the promised land. So now they're about to enter the promised land again, the second time. And when Balak, the king of Moab, right? So now is a new king, but this king is thinking ahead because he has heard what has been going on with the people, them defeating the people, the towns, the cities before his, which was the Amorites. And so right now, Balak is trying to stop the people. He's afraid. He wants to find a solution. It says the king of Moab considered what Israel had done to the Amorites. However, he sought the aid of the neighboring Midianites and sent emissaries to hire an enigmatic seer named Balaam to curse the people of Israel so that they would be defeated in the forthcoming battle. And so, who is Balaam? Is somebody that is very important to this Torah portion. Now, there's a lot of information. Again, like I always say, in the little bit of time that we have, we try to get as much as we can, and then we have many years till Yeshua, our Messiah, comes to learn more and get deeper into his information. So today is going to be very basic. So Balaam, son of Beor, was from Aram, which is roughly in ancient Mesopotamia, Syria. And this is the place where Abraham's extended family was. There is a thought which is Balaam was regarded as a seer, a great seer, a magician. Adapted in the cult, he had an evil eye, drew the spirit of demons to anything he gazed upon. And this is in the Mishnah. And he says his notoriety made him famous and powerful. People asked him to invoke curses on other enemies. The Talmud, which is in the Sanhedrin 106a, states that Balaam became so famous as a magician that he later became a chief advisor to Pharaoh. It was Balaam who advised the new Pharaoh to enslave the Israelites and to afflict them with brutal taskmakers. Now, this is what the rabbis in the Talmud and the Mishnah think about who Balaam is. And there's many thoughts about Balaam, okay? But this is just a little piece of what they think. Now, Balaam is called to curse the people of Israel. So we're going to pay attention to this term and then we're going to see what happens, right? Because Balak looks for Balaam's special of either being a magician, being a seer, being a prophet, doing divination or sorcerer. And so Balak is trying to use Balaam to curse the people so that he can basically beat the people of Israel. Remember, Balak is a king of the Moabites. So it's interesting that he decides to, instead of just was battling the people of Israel, preparing an army and going to attack them, he encouraged from Balaam and sends leaders to go and ask him for his help twice. So it says, in ancient Near East text recounts the power of diviners, magicians, and sorcerers to discern, intervene, and even manipulate the will of the gods through special sacrificial rituals such as extipacy ritual, dissection of a liver or entrails, and incantations aimed at blessing or cursing an individual or group, forecasting the future, and advising kings and other leaders. The reading of omens through the observation of various aspects of nature was considered a skilled science. So it was something that they believed to be very powerful and very true. We see now that this prophet, which is not an Israelite, this king, which is not of Israel, are taking a big part of the Torah portion, and Elohim has an interaction with this mysterious seer, prophet, diviner, I don't even know if that's the correct word, sorcerer that does magic or practice certain divination, and it gives them time and response to him. And so we see that this prophecy was not something that was just given to Israel and they were the only ones that were doing it or were able to do it. It was something that was done in ancient Near Eastern countries and customs in the time that Israel was growing. Now, there's two types of divination, which it could be inspired and deductive. Now, inspired divination is intimate in the divine realm. It uses a human intermediary most of the times. The message may come by means of human messenger, right, which we can label as a prophet, or target the audience, or in the form of a dream directly to the targeted individual. In ancient world, people could train to be prophet, and they could play an active role in cultivating prophetic messages and could serve under the sponsorship of a king as professional advisors. So this is what's going on a little bit in this Torah portion, okay? It says, inspired prophecy is informative and it occurs spontaneously. Prophecies in the ancient Near East generally focus on the king's activities and responsibilities. They usually concern political, military campaigns, and cultic activities. Most prophets were associated with particular deities and identified themselves as servants of the deity. And the prophecy was not intended to reveal the nature of the deity. They simply function to advise the king in courses of action. At times, the prophets served as ritual enforcers. Okay, so this is inspired prophecy or inspired divination in a way. Okay, it says here, dreams were an example of these inspired divinations or prophecies, and the primary intention of the inspired divination was neither to make the God known nor to make the future known, though either of these exegesis could result incidentally. Okay, from their dreams they could get a sense of direction in some areas they had concerns about and should pay attention to. Prophecy, in contrast, served to express the support of the gods for the king in the process and often gave awareness of mitigating factors and relevant issues. So these divine inspirations, prophecies, and dreams were to inform, give a message, right? The message was given by that God, and that message didn't change, and that God's message wouldn't change, right? That vehicle or that human vehicle, whether it was a prophet or the divinator, the intermediator that was a sponsor by that king or by that God, will give a specific message, and that message was delivered on behalf of that God, and it wasn't altered. The deductive divination is no less initiated from the divine realm, but its revelation is communicated through events and phenomenon that can be observed. J. Botero uses the analogy of writing to clarify the phenomenon of deductive divination, meaning that by the practice of deductive divination, it could be as if the God was writing or giving you a symbol, which you would obviously need to know in order to understand what he's saying to you. It was important to people that they gain access to those signs in every level possible so that they could try to exercise some minimal level of control over the events swirling from them, okay? Ecstasy, I don't know if I'm saying that right either, was considered one of the most reliable forms of divination and was often used to verify omens. The reading made from internal organs had nothing to do with knowledge of the way the organs function or with any aspect of physiology or pathology. To them, the inside of the animal had no function or significance. They were instead regarded as an instrument of communication, right, with the god. An example is after a sheep was chosen and purified, the gods were asked questions by the people or the intermediator, and those answers were requested to be written in their extile, which was in the entrails, right? So those organs were used to figure out what that god wanted and what was his answer. So now that we have an understanding, a little bit of understanding of what that concept of divination or prophetic message, meaning if it was inspired or deductive, we will see now in what we're about to read what is God's message through what is God's message through Balaam and Balak. So it says here, "Vayalechu sichne Moab vayitzkone Midian samim beyadam vayitzau bnei Yisrael vayechanu be'arbot Moab me'eber leyarden yarecho vayer Balak ben Sipor et Kal Asher Asha Yisrael La Emo." In English, it says the following. Now Balak, the son of Zippor, saw all that Israel had done to the Amorites. So Moab was in great fear because of the people, for they were numerous, and Moab was in dread of the sons of Israel. Moab said to the elders of Midian, "Go, now this horde will lick up all that is around us, as ox licks up the grass of the fields." And Balak, the son of Zippor, was king of Moab at the time. So he sent messengers to Balaam, the son of Beor, at Petor, which is near the river in the land of the sons of his people, to call him, saying, "Behold, a people come out of Egypt. Behold, they cover the surface of the land, and they are living opposite of me. Now therefore, please come, curse these people for me, since they are too mighty for me. Perhaps I may be able to defeat them and drive them out of the land. For I know that he whom you bless is blessed, and he whom you curse is cursed." Right? So now the elders go to Balaam. And so Balaam tells them to spend the night, because Balaam is about to go to sleep and try to get in contact with Elohim. And it says, "Then God came to Balaam and said, 'Who are these men with you?' Balaam said to God, 'Balak, son of Zippor, king of Moab, has sent word to me. Behold, there is a people who came out of Egypt, and they cover the surface of the land. Now come, curse them for me. Perhaps I might be able to fight against them and drive them out.' And God said to Balaam, 'Do not go with them. You shall not curse the people, for they are blessed.'" So this is the first command that God gives Balaam. Balaam, as of right now, has an inspired, informative divination, meaning that he told them, "Stay, I will go to sleep, and tonight I will speak to God." And in a dream, God comes and tells him, "Who are these men?" And then he says who they are. And God tells him, "You will not fulfill this mission, because these are my people, and they are blessed," meaning that he had blessed them. So Balaam arose in the morning and said to Balak's leaders, "Go back to your land, for the Lord has refused to let me go with you." So the leaders went back to Balak, and Balak didn't take that. So he sends them again with gifts. Now it says, "Now please, you also stay with gifts." And he said, "Please come, then curse the people for me." So Balak wants Balaam to curse them. And Balaam replied to the servants of Balak, "Though Balak were to give me his whole house full of silver and gold, I could not do anything, either small or great, contrary to the command of the Lord my God. Now please, you also stay here tonight, and I will find out what else the Lord will speak to me." And so again, he goes to dream, and God speaks to him. And it says, God came to Balaam at night and said to them, "If the men have come to call you, and rise up and go with them. But only the word which I speak to you, you shall do." So Balaam arose in the morning and saddled his donkey and went with the leaders. Okay, so now the second time they come, Elohim tells them, in the Hebrew, it implies that Elohim tells them, you have the freedom to go with these men, because I cannot hold you back. Remember, Balaam is not an Israelite. Balaam is from Midian, and Balak is a Moabite. So Elohim says, you can go with them, but what you should do, or what you will do, is what I have commanded you. And so the first command that he got, which wasn't gonna change, was that he wasn't gonna curse them. But Balaam thought that some way God might change his mind, and so he decides to go with these men and fulfill the cursing of the people of Israel once God told them that he wasn't gonna curse them. Okay, so let's keep reading. But God was angry because he was going, And the angel of the Lord took his stand in the way as an adversary against him. Now he was riding on his donkey, and his 2 servants were with him. The donkey saw the angel of the Lord standing in the way as an adversary against him. Now he was riding on his donkey, and 2 of the servants were with him. The donkey saw the angel of the Lord standing in the way, and his drawn sword in his hand, and the donkey turned off from the way and went into the field. But Balaam struck the donkey to turn her back into the way. Then the angel of the Lord stood in a narrow path of the vineyard, with a wall with this size, and a wall on the other side. When the donkey saw the angel of the Lord, she pressed herself to the wall and pressed Balaam's foot against the wall. So he struck her again. The angel of the Lord went further and stood in the narrow place where there was no way to turn to the right or the left. When the donkey saw the angel of the Lord, she lay down under Balaam. So Balaam was angry and struck the donkey with his stick. Now Balaam is frustrated because he doesn't understand why is this donkey not obeying him. Balaam speaks to the donkey. Because you have made me a mockery of me. If there had been a sword in my hand, I would have killed you by now. Then the donkey said to Balaam, am I not your donkey on which you have saddled all your life to this day? Now it's interesting because Elohim makes a donkey speak, and he gave the power to the donkey to speak. It plays a lesson on Balaam, meaning that Balaam was given the command to not go and curse the people. He still is trying to fulfill this mission, knowing that this is not going to happen, because he feels that he has a special calling, or he has a special gift that he thinks that could diverge the mission or the purpose of God, or change the will of God, because he has a personal vision of what's going to happen. Because Elohim already told him that he cannot curse them. And Elohim chooses the donkey, his own donkey, and not only gives it power to speak, but it teaches Balaam a lesson that he needs to pay attention to Elohim's will. And now Elohim tells, okay, now that you're going, you're basically going to waste your time, because all these 4 times that you're going to try to curse the people, you will bless them. So Balaam meets with Balak. He gives him instructions of what he has to do. Build 7 altars, 7 burnt offerings. We will not get into that. We're going to get into the curse. And it says here, then Balaam took up his discourse and said, from Aram, Balak has brought me, Moab's king from the mountains of the east. Come curse Jacob for me, and come denounce Israel. How shall I curse whom God has not cursed? And how can I denounce whom the Lord has not denounced? As I see him from atop of the rocks, I look at him from the hills. Behold, a people who dwell apart. I will not be reckoned among the nations. Who can count the dust of Jacob, or number the 4th part of Israel? Let me die the death of the upright, and let my end be like this. Balak is frustrated because he just blessed them. But this is what Elohim just told Balaam in the first place. He said, you will not curse them. That's Elohim's will. Elohim will not curse the people of Israel because he's fulfilling a purpose with these people. The second time, he says the following. Then he looked up, then he took up his discourse and said, arise, O Balak, and hear and give ear to me, O son of Zippor. God is not a man that he shall lie, nor a son of man that he shall repent. Has he said, and he will not do? Or has he spoken, and he will not make it good? Behold, I have received a command to bless. When he has blessed, then I cannot revoke it. He has not observed misfortune in Jacob, nor has seen trouble in Israel. The Lord is Elohim, the Lord his God is with him, and the shout of a king is among them. God brings them out of Egypt. He is for them like the horns of a wild ox. For there is no omen against Jacob, nor is there any divination against Israel. At the proper time it shall be said to Jacob and to Israel, what God has done. Behold, a people rise like a lioness, and as a lion it lifts itself. It will not lie down until it devours the prey and drinks the blood of the slain. So again, Balaam blesses the people and establishes that there's nothing that man can do, no divination, and that God is not a man to repent and change his mind. Okay? Now, third time, he says the following. He took up his discourse and said, the oracle of Balaam, the son of Beor, and the oracle of the man whose eye is open, the oracle of him who hears the words of God, who sees the vision of the Almighty, falling down, yet having his eyes uncovered. How fair are your tents, O Jacob, and your dwellings, O Israel, like valleys that stretch out, like gardens beside the river, like aloes planted by the Lord, like cedar beside the water. Water will flow from his buckets, and his sea will be by many waters. And his kings shall be higher than Agag, and his kingdom shall be exalted. God brings him out of Egypt. He is for him like the horns of a wild ox. He will devour the nations who are his adversaries, and I will crush their bones in pieces and shatter them with his arrows. He couches and he lies down as a lion, and as a lion who dares rouse him. Blessed is everyone who blesses you, and cursed is everyone who curses you. Now Balak angered burned against Balaam, and he struck his hands together. And Balak said to Balaam, I called you to curse my enemies, but behold, you persisted in blessing them these 3 times. Therefore, flee to your place now. I said, I will honor you greatly. But behold, the Lord has held you back from honor. Balaam said to Balak, I told you, and I told your messengers, I could not do anything contrary to the command of the Lord, either good or bad, or my own accord. What the Lord speaks, that I will speak. And now, before I go, behold, I am going to my people. Come, and I will advise you what these people will do to your people in the days to come. So he took up his discourse and said, the oracle of Balaam, the son of Beor, and the oracle of the man whose eyes is open, the oracle of him who hears the words of God, and knows the knowledge of the Most High, who sees the vision of the Almighty falling down, yet having his eyes uncovered. I see him, but not now. I behold him, but not near. A star shall come forth from Jacob. A scepter shall rise from Israel, and shall crush through the forehead of Moab, and tear down all the sons of Seth. Edom shall be a possession. Seir, its enemies also will be a possession. While Israel performs valiantly, one from Jacob shall have dominion, and will destroy the remnant from the city. And he looked at Amalek, and took up his discourse, and said, Amalek was the first of the nations, but his end shall be destruction. And he took at the Canaanite, and took up his discourse, and said, your dwelling place is enduring, and your nest is set in the cliffs. Nevertheless, Cain will be consumed. How long will Ashur keep your captive? Then he took up his discourse and said, alas, who can live except God has ordained it? But ships shall come from the coast of Kittim, and they shall afflict Ashur, and will afflict Abed. So they also will come to destruction. Then Balaam arose and departed, and returned to his place. And Balak also went his way. So Elohim established his will, and through Balaam and Balak, he demonstrated that he will not change, that he will not dismay his purpose from what he has established, that his will be done, his purpose will be fulfilled, and there's no divination or magic that can change that. Our will, our vision, our purpose, what we want cannot change what God is going to establish. Balaam, Balak were used as examples to us, the nations, to understand that Israel are the people. The land is the fathers. The commandments are the order and structure of the kingdom. And one from Jacob, a lion from the tribe of Judah, will reign and represent the kingdom. And that is Yeshua, our Messiah. That being said, I hope you guys have a great week. Shavua Tov and Shabbat Shalom. Thank you.